Welcome to the Gen X Reboot interview series. In this segment, we're diving deep into the life, experiences, and wisdom of one of our incredible community members, Emily Bridson. We'll be exploring personal stories of growth, discussing the unique challenges and opportunities faced by Gen Xers, and sharing valuable insights to inspire and support each other on our journeys. Sit back, relax, and get ready for some engaging and thought-provoking conversation that will leave you feeling connected, motivated, and ready for your own Gen X reboot. Let's get started. All right. How are you doing, Emily?
Good. Thanks for having me talk with you today. I'm really excited to share some thoughts and to learn from you as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I am super excited. It's been a while since I've seen you. I know you used to live here in West Michigan and recently you've moved, but instead of me going through like your entire biography or whatever, why don't we just start out and why don't you share your story with everyone so that they can get to know you themselves instead of having me tell them?
Yeah, well, really excited to be here. And yes, I do live in Tucson now. I've been here for about 8 months, but it was kind of a series of events that brought me here. And to be honest, I know you can relate, Pete. I've always been kind of a type A overachiever, and it started early with wanting to be a professional athlete. And so in college, I found a route to do that and played overseas and played on a beach tour and went to school because, people think athletes don't go to school and don't finish things, because I'd left school a little bit early and I thought, well, that's not me. Like who are people to tell me what I'm capable or what my life will be or what I'll do? So I went back to school, finished my undergrad, and immediately started grad school at Michigan State, which was great. And, just really shifted into a sales career pretty early on because a lot of my friends were doing it, like the super competitive people that I knew. And I thought, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. There's no reason why I can't. And so I did that for a decade and was very successful. And I think during this time of like my younger adult years, I was very goal oriented. Not necessarily money wise, because I think when you're being successful, the money follows, or the accolades or whatever it is that's interesting to you. But for me, I think having that sports background, I was just uber competitive, and I'd done sales for quite some time. And I met Amanda. So, your wife, Amanda, through business school, because it got to a point where like awards and sales and money, they weren't fulfilling. And it felt like Groundhog's Day. Like every day I got up, like the alarm went off, and it was like the same thing. It was the same. And it literally felt like that movie. And I thought, I've done this for a decade, and I'm like, I don't think I can do it anymore. And so I went back to business school, which I loved. To me, education is such a joy. And I really like formal education, to be honest. I like interacting with people in the class. I like learning from others. I like the collaboration. I love it all. And so that was really inspiring to me. And I moved into operations. I learned about operations through business school, and I thought, this is amazing. This is the thing I've been looking for. And I really loved it. So I had a couple operations jobs. During that time, I was probably working 12, 16-hour days. So the drive didn't stop at all. But the focus did. And it was interesting because at least it was new things to learn all the time, which I enjoy. And during that time, I ran for city commission. So I became a city commissioner in Kentwood. And so not only was I working really demanding jobs, then I was on call 24/7. And I found out, I went through a public policy institute, again, more learning that I love. And I actually ended up running for mayor. And so this is where I think the big change started for me personally. I was not successful. And that was a really hard pill to swallow, because I can count on maybe one hand the times where I've had really public failures, like a divorce would be one. Not winning the mayoral race would be another. But I mean, literally few and far between, because I usually got what I worked for.
Right.
That competitiveness, right?
put in the time and effort and just grind away, like legitimately grind, like 24/7. And so that was a really turning point for me in terms of thinking like, okay, I'm either gonna like 6 months left of the race. I thought, okay, I'm either gonna make all the policy changes I want, really do some really good change for the city, be more inclusive, all the things that I had a whole list. Or, maybe it's a good time to segue and really be purposeful about what's next. And I'm 50.
Okay.
So I thought, well, this would be a chance to like reevaluate and think through like what's next. And so I created a list of cities and places and things I loved. And I'd been to Utah 5 years ago today, or this month, and I loved it. I thought I could live here, I could hike, I could be out west. And so immediately I knew if I didn't win that election, I would still be winning because A, either I had my dream job, or B, I'm starting my new life. Like they were like completely different paths. But in that sense, I was like, I won't ever lose because I'll either have the things I want or I'll have the life that I want and have a chance to like re-envision truly what that is, like living my life for me, which I'd never had done before because I'd always been about expectations, exceeding people's expectations, being successful, the rat race, the next thing, like the next exponential thing.
Right. So when you were looking at that and you came to the realization that, holy cow, I'm going to win either way, which one were you pulling for more?
Well, the old me wants to win the,
Right.
it's still on the race, the rat race. Yeah. I mean, and I'd spent the last 7-8 years of my life preparing to run for that race.
Okay.
So we had a whole Raul Alvarez, you may know him. We talked all the time about like what's next and what's this and what's that. And we just kind of kept chipping away at it every single day. So when I didn't win, it was soul crushing.
Yeah.
Because of the fact of how I'd lived my life up until that point.
Right.
Do
you think, or do you look at that competitive drive that you have internal in a completely positive light, or do you look at kind of as a monster that overtakes you sometimes?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, I pretty much have put my personal life on hold for a decade.
Yeah.
And, working 16-hour days and being on call, like, at some point, like you have to say to what end?
Right.
Like, honestly, to what end? Like and I get it, like I'm a big women's champion. So it's like, okay, so I see myself as like my niece who's a sophomore at Michigan State. I want her to have more choices. I want her to have more options. I want her to have the ability to do whatever the heck she wants to do. It doesn't matter to me what it is, but to me, I feel like sometimes women, you have to be the one.
Right.
And even when I'm involved with the League of Women Voters here in Tucson now, and I was sharing my story with a member who's probably 80, and she used to be a former city commissioner in Tucson. She's like, you know what? I'm so glad you ran for mayor. And I'm like, it's so interesting to me because you have to be the one that pushes those boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think without that, so that's another like really big driving force for me, is so that others after me have those choices that are super difficult for me right now, or you know what I mean? So it's a lot of it's a lot of driving things that rattle around up here. But that is one of the compelling reasons, like I try not to take the easy route, because I think of, and so when she said, I'm so glad you ran, no one's ever told me that. And I'm like, you know what? I get it, because she gets it. Being 30 years my senior, I can't imagine the choices she had or the opportunities she didn't have. And she persevered through that. So I know she got it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if it's healthy. I don't know if I can say, yes, it's the best thing ever, but I think I grew up programmed to be a certain way. And so now that I've taken the other path, I'm like rewriting my brain of what it means to be happy,
Yeah.
what it means to have a fulfilled life, what it means to work 40 hours a week. Like I tell people I feel semi-retired and to do the things that I love. Like, I don't think I've ever been happier. I don't think I've ever been more fulfilled. I don't think I've ever been more rested, healthy. Now I have like a personal life. It's all the things that it's like the exact opposite of what I had, but yet I'm so much more happy. But it's a complete different path. And I don't know how else to explain it, but it's really interesting because this path has only been for like 8 months now. So like every day I wake up, I'm like, I don't know what to expect kind of, but it's all really good. Like I wake up and I'm like, this is a really good day. And that's not a bunch of crap. Like it's the honest to God truth.
Did you go through a period in the very beginning because it was like the complete opposite way of the way that you were going to where you questioned whether even it was a healthy direction because it was so uncomfortable, or was it just comfortable right from the outset?
Well, I think I knew like my time in West Michigan, because I'm from Lansing.
Okay.
And I lived in Lansing for a while because my family lived there. So that was the expectation, right? The first 25 years.
Right.
And then I moved to Grand Rapids and lived there 11 years because it was close to my family.
Okay.
Right. And so it wasn't truly my life yet, but it was meeting those expectations, but moving my life a hair in the direction. And so when I really thought, okay, I've lived here 11 years, I know this isn't quite the right place, but 11 years is long enough. Like 11 years now is time to find the right place for me.
Sure.
And so it was pretty easy because I knew I'd love to hike. I knew I wanted to travel out west. I knew I work at a women's center. I knew I wanted to focus on women's issues, which, we were talking about is it's just a huge pull of mine, a passion of mine. And I found the League of Women Voters. So I'll be president-elect next month of the league here in Tucson, which works on public policy and creating change. And so I think all those things that you do kind of culminate, like the work, people see the work, right? And you're the product, you become the product of the work, right? You become the product of the grind. Like today I'll speak at the Chamber of Commerce at 3:00 today. They don't know me. I've lived here 8 months. It's like, okay, but you have the legacy of work that you can point to regardless if people know you or not. And so it's interesting. So it hasn't felt hard for me. And people are like, it's so interesting. The comments I get now are like, well, aren't you lucky that you took a gamble and it paid off? And it's like, like, again, who are you to judge me? Like, it's so funny. People judge you. It's like, no, it was a calculated, researched path. It wasn't like I rolled the dice and whoop, here I am in Tucson. Like, people have the craziest things. And, that's why I think you have to just like do your thing, because everybody's going to have an opinion and they don't really know you. They don't really know the motivations. They don't know the struggle. They don't know the heartache. They don't know the tears. They don't know the hours. And how would they? But yet, I don't think it makes other people's opinions about your life valid. Like it quite frankly, none of that matters.
Yeah, it's interesting because I asked you that question about your competitiveness, whether it's a monster. And the reason I asked that is because I feel like the competitiveness that I have coursing through my body, I have allowed to make me do some crazy stuff. But as you went on to explain that, it sounds to me like what you did was you discovered your own purpose along the way. Because when you start talking about the things that you're doing right now and your ability to impact other human beings and allow them to have more options because you're out there blazing the trail or stretching that comfort zone of society so that it's a little bit bigger for the next generation, that to me is amazing. And that sounds like, and I think when you do discover your purpose, like you almost feel like you're cheating a little bit when you wake up in the morning, don't you? Like, I
Kind
don't,
of. I mean, each day is really great. I
Yeah.
mean, the work is meaningful to me. How I spend my free time is meaningful. My personal life is meaningful. I'll be in Phoenix this weekend, paddleboarding with a friend on the Salt River. Like, I don't know what could be better. Maybe not working. Like
Yeah.
that would be like the next thing. But like now I've cut my hours down in half. So, and I work from home on Fridays. Like it's not horrible, friend. But that would be the next iteration of like, not working. And so, those are conversations I had to have with my financial advisor. We go back and forth about this.
Yeah.
She's a firm no, and I'm a firm like, well, let's negotiate. So, but, I think you really have to take hold of your life. That's what I've learned is like passive choices that happen aren't necessarily the right choices. Like being very mindful and very purposeful about the life you want to live, and then like pulling the cord and actually doing it. And you and I were talking about this. Like I can tell people like, here's what I did, and just share my story without saying, hey, well, here's how you do it too.
Uh-huh.
But very few people receive this message, and very few people understand unless you've done it. Like you're living your own life, like your absolute own life without anybody's expectations anymore. And it's very rare. I feel like it's very rare. There's very few people I know that are doing the thing. Like, I can think of a handful, but are they? Because they're like, well, I still think I might want to move here and move there. And I'm like, well, you're kind of living your life, but you're kind of not still. So it's an interesting position to be in. It's kind of like, I'm not a mom. I can't understand what it's like to be a parent because I haven't lived that life. I almost feel like this is the same thing until you've pulled the cord, you've decided on what your life is going to be, like legitimately from the bottom up. You can't really understand that until you're doing it.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I mean, there just aren't that many people that are willing to do it. But I do feel as though with the pandemic, it caused far more people that are out there doing or changing the direction of their life now, kind of accidentally, because I think at that moment, I mean, my when I was talking about the competition thing, I think the greatest moment of my life up to that point was when it was probably like the day or two after they shut down the entire world, right? And I all of a sudden came to the realization that none of my competitors had the ability to get ahead of me at that moment. And I didn't have the ability to get ahead of my competitors at that moment. And in fact, nobody was doing anything but staying within their four walls. And I was able to take a big, deep breath and exhale because for the first time in the history of my professional career, I did not feel under attack. And all that is stuff that I created inside. That's why I think, was asking if the competition was a monster to you because it was really driving me. But once those circumstances shifted and gave me the ability to kind of do a little bit of self-analysis, I legitimately accidentally ended up in the same similar position of you of living my life that way. But it was because I recognized that it was only a decision away. That's all you had to do is make one decision and then everything cascades after it. But
it's so true. And I had a friend come recently, and you just see people, it's like the cliff is here and there's just like the one choice, right? And you're like, you're so close. And yet there's like no awareness of like, it's literally one choice.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me. Like, but yet I don't know. It's, you can't tell people these things, right?
Right.
All we can do is share a story and be like, well, this was my story in hopes of inspiring people to live their own life. I'd love to see more of my family and friends really happy and really doing whatever it is they want to do. But people have their own paths, I guess. It's very interesting to me. I wish I knew how help people over that. And maybe this is what this is, help people over that one next decision where they just start living their life and let all of the ancillary things that really aren't important go.
Right.
Because then I think you're free to make choices where you're really happy and engaged, not just trudging along doing the things that are expected, although they might be meaningful and purposeful, but yet is it leading to a life that's worth living?
Right. Yeah. No, that is absolutely true. It's and honestly, I think the way that you and me and anyone else who wants to help give people that little nudge over is by being an example. Like, we don't need to coerce them. We just need to show them the path and let them see that it's possible and share those stories. And you're right. That's one of the reasons why I think this community is going to be so important, is it's a community of other people who have maybe taken that nudge and other people who might be halfway into that step. And then it just becomes a perpetuating cycle of pushing people over the edge. And then we got a whole bunch of Gen Xers out there really enjoying life and not having to worry about like following someone else's prescriptive guidelines that we've been following forever.
Well, it's funny, and I have had a couple of people reach out to me saying, "This is amazing. What did you do?" And we're thinking, here's what we're looking at, and here's the options, and they're going through their financials and they're figuring out like changing jobs and what would that mean, and like I'm like, okay, so it's interesting because I don't expect people to watch, but I think people do, which is so interesting to me because very few people ever reach out and say, "Hey, I want to do that too," or "Hey, I'm watching you." And I guess I don't have much perception of are you influencing people? And that wasn't my intention. My intention was to like live my life, like live my best, happiest life where it's about me, and not me in a selfish way, but creating the life that I really need and want. And so it's hard to think like if you do have an influence or what that is, because I've never really, that's not been an outcome. I don't care about that. I mean, I hope people do follow it for the right reasons if they're unhappy, and I do think a lot of people are unhappy because they aren't doing this. I mean, even that they think they are and their lives are fine and nice and they show up for work, I don't think a lot of what we do is very fulfilling and rewarding. At the end of the day, we're trudging through until Sunday when we can play a round of golf or something. I mean, I wouldn't call that living.
No. I was talking to someone the other day because I literally the first probably 2-3 hours that I'm awake of every single day is spent hiking, 7 to 10 miles and being very like thinking about my life and thinking about the things I'm grateful for and thinking about the people I care about and thinking about some of the things that I'd like to tackle. And I said, it is 1000% impossible to have a bad day when you start your day in that setting. And you can figure out a way to work in those, that hiking and different things like that and integrate your work right into it to where you don't even feel like you're working because you're super creative, because you're out there living your life the way you want to live your life. And again, you mentioned it earlier, so many people want to judge. That's okay. That's their job.
Yeah.
Their judgment doesn't have anything to do with me. And one other thing I wanted to touch on before I forgot, because you said, a lot of people will watch and stuff, but the most popular TV that's out there today and for quite some time now has been reality TV shows, right? Because people would rather sit there in the comfort of their couch, which is also in the comfort of their comfort zone,
Right.
Other people live and be fascinated and entertained by that instead of getting out and living their own life. And I think the people that we're going to attract to our community intentionally, and we're putting it out there right now, is we want people that want to live their own reality shows and share it with other people so that we can get them off of that couch and out of that comfort zone where all the good stuff is.
Well, I think the biggest lesson I've learned is like even the worst crash and burn, like I'll call the mayoral race, because it was so public and you put yourself out there in such a personal way, right? I mean, it's like you just bare your soul. And at least that's what it felt like to me. It's truly like just like opening up your chest and, but even with that, I mean, once the pain and the heartache subsides, right? Time heals everything. I'm a huge believer in that. You get so much more back from even a crash and burn, like your personal growth, your expectations, the people you've met along the way, like the journey. Like I actually wouldn't trade it for everything. I mean, someone asked me the other day, like, well, what would happen if you could go back and you could like wish that into happening? Like you change the course and you could win that election or whatever. And they're like, would you do it? That's like, that's a really good question, because it goes back to the hard wiring that you and I experience. I'm like, kind of, but no,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to like, it's so interesting to me. But even the biggest failures, the most public failures, the most humiliating things, like, we've all had them. We've all had setbacks. It doesn't matter if it's a personal, thing or a professional thing. It is, you don't die. And I think having that freedom now of like tackling a really significant project and not knowing the outcome, like truly not knowing the outcome, you're so much a better person for have done it, even if you weren't successful, because of all the outputs that come from it. And so I almost feel like so much more free now, because I've let go of like the fear and anxiety and the what ifs and, well, what are people going to think? And I'm going to, this and that. And what does that mean? And does that affect my brand? And, all those things that people that are very highly motivated think through, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what now has created so much more freedom, is because on the other side of that, you see that those are kind of more self-imposed things on your own self versus other people. Like when they said, well, you didn't win, so what? And I'm thinking, this was 8 years of my life, like it's all your internal like dialogue, but other people don't see it as such.
Right. Yeah.
And so that I think has been the biggest learning opportunity for me. Like in hindsight, I think it takes a while to reflect, through all that and to gather all the learnings, right? You can't do that in acute phase of disaster.
Right.
Right. Even 6 months out, I still think you're in the disaster zone, because you're not, it's hard to walk through all the things and understand like the good that's come from it. And it's not trying to appease myself. Like it's not that. Yeah. But that's an interesting thing for people to consider when they're thinking about, I know, we have a lot of entrepreneurial friends, like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen, right? Is you're learning and growing, and then you're finding the path, the right path, by doing the things like you're talking about, trying the things that are getting you closer to what that path should be for you. And so to me, I feel way more free, like way more personal, peaceful thinking, because I've gone through like my own personal gauntlet of like what I would call disaster, or like, very public failing.
Well, I have enjoyed from the first time I met you, when you and Amanda were going to school together, but I can tell you, I am talking to a completely different human being, and I can tell that you feel lighter, and I can tell that you are authentically enjoying yourself. And I can tell that you're still like, you still have that giddy, excited feeling about when you wake up in the morning and go, is this really my life? Does that sound at all close to it?
Well, I think I'm very grateful. Like that's the word that keeps coming back to me. But they were hard fought choices too, as like this shit isn't easy. In making choices and telling people the choices, and you really have to, I think, own your own life. And so how I got here was very purposeful. It was very thoughtful. It was very reflective. And it was through a bunch of crazy stuff that makes you really evaluate, am I happy or am I not? At the end of the day, I wasn't. And I thought, what am I going to do to really turn this ship around? And not that I was like depressed or miserable, but I wasn't living my life. And so when you say I'm not living my life, and these aren't the things, and these aren't my expectations, and guess what? I really need to make a change.
Mhm.
But then you have to pull the ripcord, right? You have
Yeah.
to do the research. You have to be thoughtful, and or maybe you don't. I was thoughtful because I'm a planner and meticulous, but there's probably many ways to approach pulling the ripcord. But you're not going to be happy unless you get to that point. You can go up to the edge, like we talked about the cliff, but if you're on the cliff, it doesn't matter. You're still miserable and things aren't how they should be. Like to me now, things feel like how they should be. Like authentically, my life has fallen into slots of where I should be, what I should be doing, all of the things. And it feels like that when I wake up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I mean, this has been obviously, and I know this is the very first interview that we've done for the Gen X Reboot Stories. And I think it's one for the books, because I think you did a phenomenal job of sharing the experience and all of the good stuff, like the raw parts of the story. Like you said, it's not easy, but everybody has the ability to take that jump, pull that ripcord, and go out there and do it themselves. And it just is one decision, and then all the rest cascade over. So, but thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I love talking with you, and happy to connect with anybody. If I'll pull your ripcord, don't think I won't, or however I can help, I'm happy to. I think living your authentic, happiest life is the most important thing.
Well, thanks a lot. You and I need to stay on so I can show you a way to gain back more of your life. And we'll see y'all next time. Hold on.
That concludes another fantastic episode of the Gen X Reboot interview series. A huge thank you to our wonderful guest, Emily, for sharing her inspiring stories, insights, and valuable advice with our community. We hope you enjoyed this conversation and feel inspired to continue exploring your own personal growth journey. Remember, if you want to connect with like-minded Gen Xers, join our Facebook group and be part of our supportive community where we share experiences, engage in meaningful conversations, and empower each other to live our best lives. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more enlightening interviews. Until next time, keep growing, learning, and embracing the unique experiences that make us the amazing Gen X community we are. Thank you.